Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila. Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Reading from the 19th chapter of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Planting the Seed. So Chuck, one of the devotees in the storefront, invited me upstairs to see the Swami in private. I was led out of the storefront into a hallway and suddenly into a beautiful little garden with a picnic table, a bird bath, a bird house, and flower beds. After we passed through the garden, we came to a middle-class apartment building. We walked up the stairs and entered an apartment which was absolutely bare of any furniture, just white walls and a parquet floor. He led me through the front room and into another room, and there was Swami, sitting in the same majestic spiritual presence on a thin cotton mat, which was covered by a cloth with little elephants printed on it, and leaning back on a pillow which stood against the wall. One night, Bruce walked home with Wally, and he told Wally about his interest in going to India and becoming a professor of Oriental literature. Why go to India? Wally asked. India has come here. Swamiji is teaching us these authentic things. Why go to India? Bruce thought Wally made sense. So he resolved to give up his long-cherished idea of going to India, at least as long as he could go on visiting the Swami. Bruce, I decided to go and speak personally to Swami. So I went to the storefront. I found out that he lived in an apartment in the rear building. A boy told me the number and said I could just go and speak with the Swami. He said, yes, just go. So I walked through the storefront, and there was a little courtyard where some plants were growing. Usually in New York, there's no courtyard, nothing green, but this was very attractive. And in that courtyard, there was a boy typing at a picnic table, and he looked very spiritual and dedicated. I hurried upstairs and rang the bell for apartment number 2C. After a little while, the door opened, and it was Swami. Yes, he said. And I said, I would like to speak with you. He opened the door wider and stepped back and said, yes, come. We went inside together into his sitting room and sat down facing each other. He sat behind his metal trunk desk on a very thin mat, which was covered with a woven blanket-like cover that had frazzled ends and elephants decorating it. He asked me my name, and I told him it was Bruce. And then he remarked, in India during the British period, there was once Lord Bruce. And he had said something about Lord Bruce being a general and engaging in some campaigns. I felt that I had to talk to the Swami to tell him my story, and I actually found him interested to listen. It was very intimate sitting with him in his apartment. And he was actually wanting to hear about me. While we were talking, he looked up past me, high up on the wall behind me. And he was talking about Lord Chaitanya. The way he looked up, he was obviously looking at some picture or something, but with an expression of deep love in his eyes. I turned around to see what made him look like that. Then I saw the picture in the brown frame, Lord Chaitanya dancing in Kirtan. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Jai Shri Shri Radha Giridhar Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Jai Prabhupada. Sai Gautama. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udire. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiti. Reading from the fourth canto, chapter 25, text 51. Chapter is entitled Characteristics of King Puranjana. Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Nama Puryatma Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha Devahurnama Puryadva Uttarena Puranjana Rashtam Uttara Panchalam Yati Shrutadharanvitaha. Repeat the synonym. Devahu, of the name Devahu. Nama, it was called. Puryaha, of the city. Dwaha, gate. Uttarena, on the northern side. Puranjanaha, King Puranjana. Rashtram, country. Uttara, northern Panchalam of the name Panchala. Yati used to go, Shrutadara Anvitaha, with his friend Shrutadara. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Translation: on the northern side, there was a gate named Devahu. Through the gate, King Puranjana used to go with his friend Shrutadara to the place known as Uttara Panchala. Is here the purport? The 2 years are situated on the northern side and the southern side. The ear on the southern side is very strong and is always anxious to hear about sense enjoyment. The ear on the northern side, however, is used for taking initiation from the spiritual master and for gaining promotion to the spiritual sky. The right ear or the ear on the southern side is called Pitruhu, which indicates that it is used for attaining the higher planetary systems known as Pitraloka. But the left ear, which is known as Devahu, is utilized for hearing about even higher planetary systems such as Maharloka, Tapaloka, and Brahmaloka, or yet even higher planets situated in the spiritual universe, where one becomes more inclined to be permanently situated. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.25. Yanti deva vrata devan pitir yanti pitir vrataha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajino pimam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. Those who worship ancestors go to the ancestors. And those who worship me will live with me. One who is interested in being happy on this planet as well as after death generally wants to be elevated to the Pitraloka. Such a person can use the right ear for hearing Vedic instructions. However, one who is interested in going to Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, and Vaikuntha planets or Krishna Loka may take initiation from the spiritual master in order to be elevated to such loka. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nam. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Prasharani, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachya. Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande, Shri Gurundina Tarina, Paramananda Madhava, Shri Chaitanya. Hare Krishna. So we continue discussing the pastimes of King Prachinabarishad, and he's hearing the allegorical story of Puranjana. I've been hearing that for a couple of weeks now. So we understand that King Prachinabarishad, he was doing all sorts of yajnas for the purpose of sense gratification. And he was, according to the scripture, so he's doing a lot of karma kanda activities, and he was also even doing animal sacrifices. At this point, he was approached by Narada Muni out of compassion. He came to King Prachanabarsha. And he spoke to him. He said, "Oh, why are you wasting your time doing all these yajnas? What are you hoping to achieve?" He was doing so many yajnas. As he was doing one yajna, he was already preparing for the next one, the preparation starting. And you finish this, start the next one, the next one. So continuously he's doing these yajnas, trying to get all sorts of material benefits. And during this time, so Narada Muni comes. Narada Muni is very significant. Even his name is very meaningful. So Narada means, Nara means one who gives, or Nara refers to Narayan, and Da means Dadati, one who gives. So Narayan is one who gives, Narayan, one who gives Krishna Bhakti. And he's got a very special place in our Sampradaya because Prabhupada explains that our Sampradaya comes from Narada Muni, or Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Narada Muni is Brahma's son. And he even explains, he says that the immediate spiritual master is the representative of Narada Muni. He's not even saying, Prabhupada, your immediate spiritual master is a representative of Narada Muni because he's doing the same job. He's traveling all over the world and he's trying to deliver fallen conditioned souls out of compassion. So Narada Muni he understands that this King Prachanabarsha, he's actually the descendant of Dhruva Maharaj. So he comes in a great lineage of devotees, but he has forgotten this and he's doing all sorts of karma kanda activities. So he wanted to enlighten this king. And he started off in a very nice way. He didn't immediately start instructing him. He sort of tested him, and King Prachanabarsha, he was following Vedic, he was doing all these karma kanda activities according to the Vedic principles. And he had great respect for sadhus. So he went to Narada Muni and he told him, I don't know the goal of life. I cannot know the goal of life because I've been doing karma kanda activities all my life. Describe, Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. One cannot understand that the ultimate goal of life is Vishnu or Krishna if one is engaged in all sorts of fruitive activity, sense gratificatory activity. So he goes to Narada Muni, he's honest, he says, I'm engaged in all this activity, so I cannot understand, so you tell me. And Narada Muni starts his instruction. So the spiritual master can instruct devotees in so many ways, according to the nature of the disciple. So sometimes the spiritual master may be very harsh, disciplined, you fool. But not all disciples may be able to take that. Some might leave. I can't take Krishna consciousness. He scolded me in front of so many people. My ego is hurt, so they might leave. So not everyone can be instructed the same way. Sometimes, or in the beginning, Prabhupada would feed all his disciples and give him more prasad, give him more roti, give him more gulab jamun, eat till you know. Because that's required for that particular person at that time. And then later on, he might give different instructions. Okay, now you stop, control your eating. Balona khaive, balona eat palatable dishes. So like that, each disciple has to be instructed differently. So for Prachanabarsha, he's a king. He cannot go up to the king and say, oh, you fool, you rascal. He has to tell him a nice way. He's a very aristocratic person. He's a king. So he decides to tell him this story, allegorical story. And it's a very elaborate story. It spans over almost maybe 4 chapters in Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's trying to teach him by telling him a story so that he'll come to the conclusion himself. And the story is it's actually about himself. It's about King Prachanabarsha. So he tells him, oh, dear king, once upon a time, there was another king named Puranjana. And we understand Pura means city and Jana means one who resides there, or refers to the soul living in this material body, an embodied soul. So this embodied soul was given this minute independence, and the soul decided, or Puranjana, he decided, why should Krishna be the enjoyer? Let me enjoy. And he started wandering around this material universe, trying to find a suitable place to enjoy his sense. So he went to different cities, species to another, trying to find enjoyment. And then he comes to this city of Navadwarapura, a city of 9 gates. The very elaborate descriptions given in the previous verses. And here Narada Muni starts describing the 9 gates of this city. So the 9 gates would be the 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, the mouth, 2 ears, the anus, and the genital. So I think the last few days we've covered the nostrils, the gate of the mouth, and the eyes, the 2 eyes. So now the last verse yesterday and today, he's describing the gates of the ears. So we understand we've got 2 ears. It sounds to us, it sounds the same. We're hearing the same thing in both ears, but we understand from the story, from this past, or from Narada Muni's explanation, that the right ear is stronger and it's used for the exact word. It's always anxious to hear about sense enjoyment. The right ear is always anxious to hear about sense enjoyment. And the left ear is always used for hearing Vedic instructions and elevating ourselves to the higher planetary system. And yesterday, Vaikunteshwar Prabhu, he explained quite nicely about how each ear is connected to the opposite side of the brain. And we understand, so the right ear is connected to the left brain, which is more analytical, math, and the left ear is connected to the right part of the brain, which is more related to emotion, makes you more musical and that kind. And we understand that he has a friend with him. His friend name is Shrutadara. So the ears have a function. The function of the ears is hearing. So this Shrutadara is his friend, who is the potency of hearing. These 2 ears have the potency of hearing. And they hear different things. And so the question yesterday that was asked was here, and Prabhupada also explains, he says that the the northern side is used for taking initiation from the spiritual master and gaining promotion to the spiritual sky. So the question yesterday was, so during Brahmin Diksha, which year do you hear the mantra from? Which year do you remember from? Do you remember when you got, do you remember which year? I have, yeah. Do you remember which? Okay. Anyone else? Asked Prabhu, he couldn't remember. So it's quite interesting, because when we see Prabhupada's instructions, many places he says, recite the Gayatri mantra in the right ear. And then they have transcriptions where Prabhupada says, you play the tape, he sent the cassette to the different parts of the world where he was giving Brahmin initiation. And he said, play it in the right ear of the disciple. Whereas here, it's so how do we? I haven't. A few things came to mind. I heard a few things, but I haven't got the clear understanding. Anyone has heard anything on this subject before? Exactly. So we don't forget that this story is an allegorical story. It's a story about the materially, well, the soul is embodied in a material body. So this is not it's not that he's in a spiritual body. So we're looking at the years from a material point of view. Yes, each year has got some. It's not gross; it's more subtle. But again, what we are as devotees, we want to hear transcendental subject matter. We want to hear about Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's name, Krishna says, Janma Karma Chame Divyam. These are transcendental, they're above the material modes in nature. So these material laws don't apply to Krishna Katha or Krishna's name. So, like Prabhu said, it doesn't matter whether left here or right here, just here. That's the most important thing. And like you said, you can't remember which, maybe both ears. And one sannyasi, Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, he was saying that he was recollecting, and he said during his Brahmin initiation, so Prabhupada gave him in 1 year, and he gave another disciple in the other year. So it doesn't, at least this is from what I've understood, and I tend to be corrected. I'm not sure the details, but this is what we understand it. So we'll discuss, so just to get that out of the way, right here, left here, it doesn't matter for devotees, we just want to hear. So I thought we'll discuss a little bit about the importance of the ears, the glories of hearing, who should we hear from, what should we hear. And I guess the topic is wide. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of pastimes the devotees have perfected their lives by hearing. So many descriptions of the glories of hearing. We'll just discuss a little bit about that. So Prabhupada explains that hearing is, the ears are one of the most important organs. The example he gives is when someone is sleeping and you want to wake them up. All the other senses are inert. You can put anything in front of that person's eyes. You can't wake him up. You put some nice fragrant flowers in front of his nostrils, he won't wake up. All sorts of prasad you can put in front, but he's not going to eat. So the only sense is hearing. You shout, wake up, and the person will wake up. So even though all the other senses are sort of inert, the sense of hearing is always very strong. So this is one of the strongest senses. And what is the proper use of this hearing? So 99% of people in this material world, they use this strongest sense for all sorts of things. We understand Shravanam, the 9 process of devotional service starts with Shravanam. And it's very scientific because whatever you hear, you'll do Kirtanam, you hear something, you hear about the latest, something in politics, and then you meet someone else and you start talking about that. Oh, do you know that person won the election, this, that, or whether it's cricket or whatever sport you're into. So Shravanam, you keep hearing that, and then you keep repeating that. And then naturally that will come in your mind. Smaranam will also be whatever you've heard and repeated. So then their destination, throughout their life, they're hearing material things, they're speaking material things, they're going to be remembering material things. And then at the end of that life, we understand from Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam, and here Prabhupada explains how if you want to go to the planet of the demigods, you worship the demigods, which means you hear about them, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, about devatas or material, the sense gratification, you go to different lokas, Prithvi Loka. There's a real life story that I heard from one sadhu who mentioned, I think I mentioned a few times because I quite find that story very easy to understand, and it's something that was real life example. So this sadhu, he had a disciple, and he said, "Oh Maharaj, my father is in his last stages. Can you come and see him and just bless him?" And for sadhus, this is not uncommon, and people just usually remember them when things are going bad, or when someone's about to die. They call a sadhu, get some blessing. So he went to this place, and this man is lying in his bed. And when he saw from far, he could see someone in saffron look like a sadhu. He motioned to him, come closer. So the sadhu went. He was expecting him to ask something, please bless me or tell me some Krishna Katha. So the sadhu went close to him and then he asked in Hindi, he said, what is the price of rubber today? What? Price of rubber? What's wrong with this man? Then the son explained, see, actually my father is a tire dealer. His whole life he's been dealing with tires. And the cost of the tires depends on the cost of the rubber. So he's always finding out what's the price of rubber. The price goes up, the tires, selling price will be higher, you get more profit. So his whole life he was thinking like that. He's doing Shravanam Kirtanam about rubber, tires. And Smaran, naturally at the time of death, that's what he's remembering. So again, this is not the right use of the ear. Then we understand what is the right use of the ear. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has given some very beautiful examples. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's saying how merciful Krishna is. Krishna knows that this is the most important organ. So he's given us sound so that we can hear the transcendental sound vibration. And for the sound to be transmitted, he's created ether. So that the sound, without ether in a vacuum, you can't hear any sound. So he's given us all these things just to help us perfect the function of the ear. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says, very beautiful. E sabdamrita chari yara hoi bhagyabari se karne iha kore pana iha ye nahi sune se kana janmi lekene kana khadi samase kana. So he says, one who is fortunate, he can hear four things. Krishna's words, Krishna's tinkling of the ankle bells, his beautiful voice, and the vibration of his flute. If one does not hear these sounds, then the ears are as useless as conch shells with holes. If a conch shell with a hole, you can't blow it. You can't do abhishek with it, all the ingredients will leak out. So ears that have not heard these four things, they are useless. The Chaitanya, it's Antilila 17.48. Krishna's words, his tinkling of his ankle bells, his voice, and the vibration of his flute. Flute. And again, he says, Krishnera Mathura Vani, Amritera Tarangini. He says the topics of Krishna are like waves of nectar, Amrita Tarangini. And if one's ears do not hear such nectar, then again, it's like a conch shell that is damaged with holes. What is the use of such a conch? What is the use of having ears? So the right use of our ears, we understand Prabhupada says this flute sound of Krishna is actually the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the right use of our ears is to hear Krishna's holy name, to hear pastime, Krishna Katha, to hear about Krishna and Krishna, things related to Krishna. And we understand that devotional service, Krishna consciousness, starts with the process of hearing, Shravanam, first of the 9 processes of devotional service. And what happens when we hear Krishna Katha or Krishna's holy name? Again, Chaitanya Charitamrita is given, very nice description is given. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he explains that when you hear what vibration of Krishna's flute is like a bird that goes into the nest, it goes into the ears and creates a nest. And once it creates a nest in the ear, it blocks the ear. You can't hear anything else. And you can't concentrate on anything else because that bird's just constantly chirping in your ear. And then you can't, it says that he talks about the gopis are like this. When they hear Krishna's name, it goes into their ear like a bird creates a nest. And they can't stop thinking about Krishna. They can't even reply. If you ask them a question, they can't reply because they're always hearing Krishna. So that is the effect of the vibration of Krishna's flute. So hearing Krishna's name through our ears should give us that kind of result. So if you're constantly hearing Hare Krishna Mahamatra, hearing Krishna's names and Krishna Katha, then that's one way to prevent ourselves from hearing all these mundane sound vibrations. We're hearing them, but they're not affecting us. The Bilamangal Thakur, he sings this nice, this beautiful bhajan, Govinda Damodar Madhaveti. And there he describes how all the different personalities, they're always constantly chanting. And he sings about the gopis, they're going to sell butter in the market. And then he says, Vikretu kama kila gopa kanya murari padat pita chitta vritti Dhadyadikam mohavasada vocha Govinda damodara madhaveti. So he's going, they're selling butter, they're selling ghee. So instead of saying butter for sale, ghee for sale, they're saying Govinda damodara madhaveti. So like that, if Krishna's name and pastimes always in our ears, then our mind becomes constantly focused and we're not affected by whatever happens. So just, it's just something about the effects of hearing the Mahamantra. There's a few other things. Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion, he talks about, he quotes from Garuda Puran, how a person bitten by a snake, he doesn't die. He's almost dead. He's like in a comatose state. Similarly, we are all in that kind of comatose state. All of us in the material world, we're ignorant of our real position. So we are almost in a sleeping condition. But this person who's bitten by a snake can be revived by special mantras. These special mantras that can be chanted by some expert chanters. And by that mantra, this person who's bitten by a snake, almost dead condition can become awake. So similarly, all the conditioned souls of this material world, we are sleeping due to ignorance. And there's this mantra, but it has to go through the ears. So we have to hear that mantra and all, we can come out of this almost dead state, comatose condition, come out of ignorance. Srimad Bhagavatam explains how this can happen. It's quite famous verse 1.7.7. Yasyam Svei Shruyamarnam Krishne Paramapurushe. I'll just read the translation. It says, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, simply by hearing the feeling of loving devotional service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness, soka, moha, and bhaya. These three things are immediately destroyed when we start hearing about Krishna and Krishna Katha. Whereas material sound vibrations, what happens? They keep us in illusion. They always keep us in fear. And we're always lamenting. So that's the contrast between hearing with our left ear and our right ear. And again, it's explained how the process actually happens. We understand in Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto, it's explained, Satam prasangam mama virya samvito bhavanti hrit karna kataya rasayana kata tajoshanada sapavargavatmani shraddharatir bhaktir anukramishati. So by hearing Krishna Katha from pure devotees and the association of devotees, that goes into the ear and it gives pleasure to the heart. So the ear is where we receive that and it goes straight to the heart. Whereas if you're looking at the material ears, as described here, the right ear and the left ear attaching to the opposite side of the brain, that's just remaining here, it doesn't go to the heart. Whereas Krishna Katha and Krishna's name goes straight to the heart. And once it goes there, it cleanses our heart and puts us on the path of Apavarga. And then it sets in motion something you can't stop. So it says, Shraddha, Rati, Bhakti, Anukramishi. It starts off with a bit of faith and ends up in prema. It's an automatic process just by hearing. You set off that process and you can't unhear what you've heard once you've heard Krishna's name. So again, then what's the qualification? Can anyone hear Krishna's name in Krishna Katha? Does anyone have to have any special qualifications? Do we have to become vegetarian? Do we have to be Indian, Hindu? And again, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma explains, he says, Stane stita shruti gatam tanvan manubri. He said, it doesn't matter whatever state you're in. It doesn't matter what varna, what ashram, whatever you might not be vegetarian, all that is not, just start hearing. That's the main thing. Then automatically you'll goes to your heart, cleanses your heart, and you'll start engaging tanvan manubir, your body, mind, and words in Krishna's service. So that's, well, it's nice, all that is from the scriptures, but we can see some practical examples from the life of Srila Prabhupada himself about how he was such an ardent listener. So we understand that Prabhupada explains that when he first met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada, 1922, at the insistence of his friend, he says he listened to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and immediately he took him as his spiritual master. He said, I wasn't officially initiated, but the real initiation was from hearing the instructions of the spiritual master. And then he went to 1932. He had gone to Vrindavan to meet his spiritual master. He had heard his spiritual master was there. So he went to Vrindavan. I think the next day, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada was leaving Vrindavan. The night before, he was giving a lecture. And at the same time, the devotees had organized a parikrama to some famous Vishnu temple in Vrindavan. The whole party went for the parikrama. Maybe 10, 12 devotees stayed back to hear from Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur. And Prabhupada, he says, what will I do going for the parikrama? What can I see in the parikrama? I might as well stay here and hear from my spiritual master. And that was his qualification. 1933, when he got initiated, this was in Allahabad, and the temple president introduced Abhay Charan Prabhu at that time. And Prabhupada thought that he would be introduced as, he had sponsored quite a bit. He had funded the center in Allahabad. He thought he would be introduced as, there was Abhay Babu, he has contributed so much to the temple. But actually before that, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada himself said, yes, I know him. Exact words were, he hears me very patiently, he doesn't go away. So that was his qualification for initiation. He hears very nicely. And again, he met Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada in Radhakund. Again, when we go, we do so many parikramas here, there, some temples, this, that. But when he went there, he went just to hear instructions from his spiritual master. And that instruction he got was, if you get money, print books. And he spent his whole life fulfilling that instruction till the end. So who to hear from is very important. And hearing from sadhus, the spiritual master is sadhguru. That's very important. And we can see from Prabhupada's example that real association, the spiritual master, is through hearing. Actually, one Bhakti Dhir Damodar Goswami Maharaj once explained, he said, we say we went to have my spiritual master's association. So the real test is when you go to have your spiritual master's association, you go there to hear from the spiritual master. And not just to hear, that hearing, like we just understood from Bhagavatam, it goes through the ears and has to go to the heart. So if it goes to the heart, that means there must be some change. So I had association with my spiritual master, but there was no change in my heart. Then he says, is that really association? Did you really hear? So we really heard, that means it must go to our heart and there must be some change. So that is, yeah, and sometimes, so hearing from the spiritual master, that's very important. Sometimes we find that we hear from, nowadays in YouTube, so many things you can hear. If you want to hear, there's so many things to hear, so many lectures from so many different, which is good, but we have to understand, we have to have first heard from Srila Prabhupada, we have to hear from our spiritual master on a regular basis, and then we can hear from others. There's sometimes one example that was explained is, you live in the house, and every day you do the same things in the house. Sometimes you open the window to let a breeze come in just for a change. So like that, we have hearing of Prabhupada, hearing from our spiritual masters. That's what will help with our devotional service. And sometimes you might want to hear, you open the window, have a breeze, so you hear some other devotees, so many wonderful sadhus, but not at the expense of hearing from our own spiritual master. Prabhupada explains that the spiritual master is a representation of Paramatma. We can't hear Paramatma. But Paramatma is there right in front of you speaking, so we can hear the spiritual master. So hearing is very important from the spiritual master. Now we understand from Bhagavatam, there's so many examples of devotees who have perfected their lives just by the process of hearing, from Parikshit Maharaj and many other examples. Rukmini, Queen Rukmini, just by hearing, she developed the desire to marry Krishna. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had this desire that everyone should have this chance to hear. There's so many glories of hearing. So he had this desire that everyone, every living entity should have this opportunity to perfect their life by the process of hearing. And Srila Prabhupada created this institution just to fulfill that desire. The Prabhupada said this Krishna consciousness movement is progressing on the basis of Srinvatam Swakata Krishna. So somehow or other, he wanted to save, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to save all the Puranjanas of this world. So therefore he started this process of just Harinam, all over the world. Prabhupada says, and we can see that the Harinam party is going out all over the world, giving everyone this opportunity to hear the holy name. And we're not going to the left ear or the right ear of that person and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We're just chanting it out in whichever ear picks up, it doesn't matter as long as some ear picks it up. So let us, we're all already hearing very nicely Krishna Katha and holy name, but we can just see if we can increase our hearing, the most important process. And one of the qualifications is described that the price to pay is laulyam. Tatra laulyam api mulyam ekalam. You have to have that intense greed, intense desire to hear. And then once that happens, if we desire that agree to hear, then we'll find that 2 years are not enough to hear. Speak one left ear, right? You want, Rupa Goswami says, when I hear the name Krishna, so much nectar, he says 2 years are not enough. He wants millions of years. He wants millions of tongues to chant the holy name. Then he says when the tongue, that sound, Krishna goes to the heart, the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the mind, and then all the senses become inert. All senses become controlled. So we'll just stop here. And there's so much to be said in this topic, and I'm sure so many devotees here have heard so many things about this topic of hearing. Maybe someone else would like to share something. Yes? All these good qualities whenever we're asked, the answer is always associate with someone who's got the intense greed to hear. And once you hear, you'll keep wanting to hear more. It's the addictive, but it's just the starting process. Associating with those who are hearing, constantly hearing. I'm sure many of you have come across devotees like that. I've got some god brothers in the island of Bali, a lot of them. And they're constantly just, everyone's got an earpiece in their ear throughout the day. Just constantly hearing whatever they're doing, cooking. They've adjusted their life so that they're not put in a situation where they don't hear for too long. So even their work, they've tried to take up jobs which will allow them to constantly hear. A lot of them just constantly have one earpiece in one ear, and they constantly hear. Amazing. The hearing you can hear when you're in the toilet, in the bathroom, when you're cooking, anything, you can just constantly. And there are many devotees like that. You get. I was inspired by those God brothers of mine. I like that. If you find some devotees who are ardent listeners, then you'll also get that loudly. Multitasking. Yeah. It's actually one task, remembering Krishna. Everything else is just our duties. We're just doing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, part of our sadhana is a fixed time just for hearing. That whatever time that is. Hearing and reading are non-different Prabhupada says. So you've got that fixed amount of time for Bhagavatam, we're hearing some lecture for your spiritual master Prabhupada. But the rest of the day, we can still constantly hear. Like the gopis, they didn't have, they're selling butter and ghee, and they just Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. It's constantly. And we see our temple president, his case, Kala Samvara Prabhu, is always Krishna, Krishna. It's constantly, no matter what you're doing. So there's a fixed part of our sadhana, a hearing, for a certain, whatever time that you fix for yourself. But the rest of the day, you can constantly hear this music. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Anyone else with some realization? Bro? Mhm. 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 Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a very nice practical point. So I mean, the thing is to hear. Yeah. So repeatedly hearing the same lecture. That a lot of Prabhupada's disciples, they can tell word for word. Some of Prabhupada's lectures or some of his books, they can just tell exactly verbatim. They can repeat it because they have heard so many times. And that's the thing, because we're always looking for new lectures. My spiritual master is giving some new lectures, but we have to keep repeating hearing the old lectures again and again and again. Thank you so much. Good job. It's a quality of a devotee. Tushan teacher, Raman teacher is supposed to be doing that. It depends on the nature of the person. You end up with one person in the group who's a bit disruptive. The whole thing will be spoiled. But generally, I mean, devotees, you all come together with the same mindset, or you choose devotees who have the same similar interest, and then any other. Thank you very much. Thank you for enlivening discussion. Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Shri Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Vancha Kalpadru Vishwa Kripa Sindhu Paitanam Bhavan Vaishnav.